Welcome to the RetailWire podcast.
Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Brian back again with another great episode here on the RetailWire podcast. Joining me in the studio today, I've got another one of our BrainTrust members. This guy here, he is the principal at the Feedback Group. He is the founder and president of Numainville LLC. He's previously held several roles with the Nash Finch Company, where, if I'm not mistaken, that's where he actually initially was when he got involved here as a BrainTrust member at RetailWire. So, without further ado, I'm going to jump right in and say, welcome to the show, Mr. Brian Numainville. Yay!
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be here.
Hey, man, welcome to the show. And you spelled it right, too. That's good with Brian. All right, good job. Oh, man. So thanks for making time for us today. How's everything going in your world?
Absolutely busy. We're about to launch a national study of in-store grocery shoppers this afternoon, so it's been a day.
All right, man. Well, best wishes with that. We'll try to get through this here so that way you can get back to saving the retail world, all right? So tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Who are you? Where'd you grow up? Tell us a little bit about just who is Brian Numainville?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Minnesota here, and I think I was destined to get into business because I carried a briefcase in elementary school. And of course, that did not make me popular. But my dad worked for Control Data. So I've always been around technology. I was one of those kids, the first one in my class to bring a printed report to school from a computer generated off a mainframe report. But I was kind of a nerd that way. What can I say? But really, my first dose of marketing was one of my earliest jobs as a teenager in high school. I worked for an ad agency writing copy and doing some brochure design work. So I kind of got interested in the whole marketing area that way. And then the next job I had was doing phone interviewing for a market research company. And so that was interesting. And one day they asked me to videotape a focus group because their person didn't show up. And that got me hooked on research and on retail and kind of understanding the minds of people and why they wanted to do what they wanted to do when it came to shopping and selecting things. And so it was really kind of what sparked my interest in the whole, retail area.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So you've definitely been around retail for a long time, like childhood.
Exactly. Well, I went to the University of Minnesota after that, got my graduate and undergraduate degrees in communications, but more of the theory side, the research oriented side. I did TA a class in broadcasting, but that's about as close as I got to broadcasting.
Yeah.
But after graduating, I started working at Nash Finch Company, which at the time was a Fortune 500 retailer and wholesaler. And I started out in research, and within about 3 months, I got promoted to build a geographic information system. And it was one of the first in the food industry at that time on PC. There were some mainframe things around, but I kind of took and developed this, what we called the market analysis and planning system, for in short, MAPS. Isn't that catchy? You kind of remember that?
Okay. All right.
But and then the late 90s, I got promoted into a director of research and really, built out a whole research department that had the GIS and consumer research and employee surveys, market sales projections, all that stuff kind of came together at that point in my career.
Man. Okay. All right. So out of all the positions you've held, what would you say was kind of like that? Was there one of them that was like that light bulb moment that was just like, this is totally making me dig deeper. Let's go.
Well, yeah. I mean, there totally was, because like when I got promoted to take over research, there really wasn't a research department. I mean, there was one person kind of doing research with an admin, but there wasn't really a department. And my mandate there was to really build out a fully functioning department that not only helped our own corporate retail stores, our own supermarkets, but also was a service for all of our independent retailers.
Okay.
So I kind of built a business within a business, and started really being able to brand and market what we did for all of our customers and use it in our own corporate store. So it was really, that was the moment where I was kind of like, yeah, I'm in the right place. This is really it. This is fun.
Yeah. Did anything like that exist in kind of your competitors at that time, or was it really truly pioneering, industry wide, or was it more just for your specific organization?
Well, I mean, it was the GIS thing. That was new.
Okay.
When I did that, it was really kind of pioneering stuff because one of our competitors had a mainframe based system. In fact, they tried to hire me to come and run theirs after I built this one.
Okay.
But it was really pioneering at the PC level and kind of because back then, in order to do mapping stuff, you had to have like one of those carousels. Remember the old carousels in the computer that where you put like 40 CDs
Oh
to load
yes.
up stuff?
Yep, because it was
So,
a vertical slot, and you'd have to wait, and you'd hear that little grrrt, and then it would open
mhm.
the door again, and then close. Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
That's right. So that's at that time to load up the census data and to load up mapping street files and stuff. That's what you had to do. But I kind of was integrating all of these different components and services together into kind of a unique offering that we kind of had that others didn't. So it was a fun time.
Yeah. So, do you ever get annoyed with yourself and put a CD or disc in the wrong direction, wrong way, or wrong
Oh,
order?
wrong direction, wrong disc. I mean, all of the above, right?
Um, and I guess my other follow up question to that was, you mentioned you were kind of the nerd kid that took the one. You were the first one to take a printed report in from a database like that. So, how many paper cuts would you say you got from the periphery on the edges of the paper? I mean,
Quite a few. Yeah, I remember that. It was that the paper wasn't the best. So,
yeah.
it was kind of one of those the green bar things. And yeah, it was not,
Oh
not
yeah.
pleasant.
That would catch you really fast, and it's funny because like my son, he's 12. He'll never understand that. He'll never get that reference because he doesn't have to deal with that, right? But
Right. That's
the
exactly it.
OGs know. We know. So,
That's right.
and if you pulled the wrong way and it ripped halfway into your page on a 14-page document, well, you know what? You're out of luck, or you're reprinting the whole thing again. So,
That's right.
ah, man. Well, so all right, so you grew up, kind of getting into the technical side of everything. So now where are you at now?
So now at the feedback group. So what we do there, and we work primarily in retail and mostly with supermarket retailers and wholesalers.
Okay.
So we look at ourselves as listening partners. So we're helping our clients listen to all of their different stakeholders, whether it's employees, customers, area shoppers, their business partners. So we do surveys with a whole bunch of different tools. We don't view ourselves as a technology company with a shiny survey tool.
Hmm.
We're more of a consultative and help. If you've got a tool that's working for you, we can come alongside you, or we can come in with our tools and help you do the research you want to do.
Yeah.
But whether, and like in today's world, we're doing a ton of employee surveys because of all the issues with retention and attracting employees. That's become very hot. And we kind of go through these cycles of what's important at a given moment in time. Sometimes it's employee surveys. Sometimes it's customer surveys. Sometimes it's business partner surveys. We're also doing a lot of that where we help wholesalers listen to their retail customers.
Okay.
So, it's anything in terms of listening to your stakeholders. And we also do a lot of, like I mentioned at the beginning, we do national studies of online shoppers and in-store supermarket shoppers. And we just do that as kind of a service to the industry and to get benchmarks that we can use with our clients. And we like to share that information because it helps everybody, do better. And we've even written a book called Feedback Rules. So we're all about feedback.
Okay. That's really awesome. So is there, I mean, just thinking exactly of that, like what are there like two or three kind of key issues that, you mentioned it's a lot of, dealing with retention and kind of the talent scouting and stuff right now. What would you say are the top two or three issues that you see frequently right now we're in, the middle of 2023? What's something that's kind of a common issue, maybe that others are looking out for right now?
Well, I'd say that, obviously inflation, food price inflation, that comes up a lot. We use a question in our surveys that, kind of asks if the retailers on the customer side, if that's how, when the customers are answering the question,
Yeah.
do you feel like the retailer's on your side when it comes to fighting inflation?
Okay.
Because that's such an important measure of understanding, like, how do they view their supermarket?
Yeah.
So that's one thing is the whole inflation thing. And obviously, The employee retention and attraction is another one in a general sense. I mean, just needing to know and what you're, I think I responded today on the RetailWire question about, it's really about listening to what your employees want and need to help them be more engaged. It's not a one size fits all. I mean, you can say, well, it's more money or it's this or it's, that. But the reality is it varies from organization to organization, and you have to be willing to listen to that and understand what's unique to you and what you can do, what you can affect to change that. So,
yeah, I think far too often organizations, especially after a while of maybe being disconnected from the grassroots people, it's funny because I think as a society here, especially in North America, we tend to think that more money will fix the issue, right? It's like, hey, well, maybe make more vacation time or something like that. But in reality, maybe it's just, hey, you know what? That system that I have to use every day, can you just make it work properly? That would make me so much happier because personally, I've stepped out of roles that were paying me very well, had, incredible benefits, all this other stuff because of the environment that I was in. And it was just not, it was not good. And I've stepped backwards. I've taken less money. I've taken different benefits or lack thereof completely. That's not what makes me satisfied. And so, that's where I think that, the work you're doing, I'm sure with feedback is just incredible because you get the opportunity to really help an organization see what's actually the cause of the problem, not just a way to treat some symptoms, right?
right. Well, there's so many times where people think they know what the answers are,
Yep.
but what the real answers are very different from what the person or people originally thought.
Yeah.
And it's so important to have a listening culture, because if you develop that listening culture, and people know that you're responsive. I mean, one of the things we always tell people is, don't even do, don't even do the research if you're not willing to act on it when you're done, because that's going to do more damage to your organization, because then you collected this stuff and you did nothing with it. And then people think you don't even listen.
Yeah.
So that's super critical.
I think whenever, exactly that point, whenever you spend the time, the money, the effort, to go through the process and figure out what's wrong. If you don't do anything with it, then why do anything at all? Honestly, it's best to not do anything at that point if you're not going to take action once you understand it. So,
right. And I mean, an action to solve the issues, and even action just to communicate what you heard. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times we that's a step in the process. It's a chapter in the book.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to take what you heard and turn that back around in a way that tells other people in the organization, hey, here's the 3 things we really heard from you, and here's our plan as to what we're going to do about them. And we'll, be giving you updates over the next 12 months. That goes a long way.
Yeah. Communication is key in so many areas, especially whenever it comes to dealing with interpersonal matters, because, I can imagine that's definitely, I would imagine that's probably part of your follow-up process, right? With them and saying, hey, here's not only what we found, but do you also make recommendations then on, hey, here's how we would recommend rolling this out to the team or anything else, or do you kind of offer that follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, it varies from client to client. Some clients have us real engaged in those types of things, and other clients, want to do it more themselves. And we provide the guardrails in terms of what we think you could or should do.
Yeah.
But it really varies from client to client. But yeah, I mean, when we do consumer research, for example, with stores, we've got one client who's great because they have a corporate office kind of review call, and I go over the results. And then they have a store level review call where we go over it with all the department managers. So everybody has a stake in the results and understands what they are, can ask me questions. And that's like a best practice. I mean, it's a great way to go about it. But yeah, it's really important to have that communication and report out back to the team.
Yeah. So take us back a little bit here. So I know we were talking a little bit ago, and in kind of in the introduction, I mentioned that you became a BrainTrust member while you were with Nash Finch Company. So what all did you do for Nash Finch while you were there?
Well, I mean, so when I was at Nash Finch, I did like I said, the geographic information stuff, and then I took over research, kind of built that, and then I also built the public relations function. There wasn't, really a PR department at all.
Mm.
It was kind of legal, would just approve or disapprove whatever needed to go out.
Isn't
So
that
we
funny?
kind of, I got into writing annual reports and press releases and, marketing collateral and a lot of things that we hadn't done as an organization. So that was like a brand new creation, which I loved.
Yeah.
And then the other piece to that was the charitable foundation. So there was a corporate foundation that really hadn't done much. But I kind of took hold of that and we got that thing built up. We got employees to be able to contribute to it. And we gave out, we would grant out to a lot of different nonprofit organizations in the hunger and shelter and education areas,
Mm.
a lot of funding for their nonprofits. My favorite memory there was creating a program called Feeding Imagination, which nice tie to the food industry and to the end of the reading side of things. Because what it was, it started out as a book donation to wear jeans on Fridays.
Okay. Yeah.
And so everybody would bring in, one or more books in exchange for wearing jeans. And we did it like once a month, and we called it Feeding Imagination Friday. And then we ended up putting libraries in schools that didn't have them. And we had all sorts of fun with events that we did. I had an Olympic athlete come in and one time with one of our events related to that. And yeah, just a really cool effort by the organization to really get engaged with the community. And it was a lot of fun.
Man, that's fantastic. Yeah, I know I had a somewhat of a similar experience whenever I was with a certain marketing agency here in Bentonville. And just seeing that opportunity to say, hey, there's something that happened in our local area here in our region. At that time, it was actually a tornado that hit Moore, Oklahoma, just up the road from us. And so, everybody there wanted to go, hey, how do we give? How do we donate? Do we volunteer? Do we what? And so myself and one other person in the organization just saw that opportunity to say, hey, this is how we can connect with our people and connect our people to other people. So, I think that's huge in any organization. So kudos to you for seeing the need and kind of stepping up and filling that. So, and
Yeah,
then,
one of the really cool things about it was too that the Spartan ended up buying Nash Finch, but one of the things that kind of lives on is really the combined charitable foundation. And they still, I started a thing called Helping Hands in the Community Day, and I saw that Spartan Nash just had their Helping Hands in the Community Day last week.
that's
And
great.
they still, that still lives on. They still do it. They still fund a lot of the same partners that Nash Finch did here in the Midwest. And then they've got other partners that they've funded as Spartans Foundation. And I had actually advised the Spartan Foundation person at the time when they were starting up their foundation. So
Yeah,
it was all kind of cool to see all that come together and live on beyond the merger of the two organizations.
and that's got to feel really good. So then, how did you get to know about RetailWire? Let's go there for a minute.
Well, I think how I found out about RetailWire, interestingly enough, was my now business partner in the feedback group was on with one of the Nash Finch retail clients talking about this feedback platform, that this automated feedback platform that we still have. And that's how I got to know RetailWire, because the CEO said, hey, you should listen in on this because our customer's on with this guy and you should talk to this guy.
Yeah.
And so in the end, I ended up hiring my now business partner as a vendor to come in and help me do some research projects. And then fast forward about 5 years, and I ended up leaving and joining his company. So
Okay. All right. Well, that's always fun, right?
yeah, you never know where those things go. But that's how I found out about RetailWire, was that first panel that I heard them talking, and then I kind of got interested in it and became a panelist myself. So
Yeah. Man, and we're glad to have you because I know I've seen your comments throughout the whole discussions pretty frequently, actually. So that's good, man. So, we love seeing the people that actually know what they're talking about. Jump in and you've got expertise in certain areas, and that really shows. And so, thanks for jumping in and contributing on that.
my pleasure. Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun, a lot of good people, and it's a lot of good idea sharing. So I enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say? Thinking of kind of your experience and what you've done, and even thinking about the brain trust and how you share your views, your opinions, your wisdom from the years. Um, what would you say would be some good advice for someone who maybe is wanting to follow in your footsteps? A certain category, certain area of expertise. What would you say would be a good thing for them to kind of look into, or maybe kind of get their feet wet in right now, so that way it sets them up for success in a future career?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I always tell people is, don't be afraid to try stuff you haven't done yet.
Mm,
Even if you don't have the experience, because those opportunities are about 1,000 times more valuable than the ones that you thought you were going to do because you have some education in it or you have some knowledge about it.
yeah.
And that example I gave earlier of the whole geographic information system, there wasn't a roadmap for me to follow.
Yeah.
And nor did I have any educational experience that would lead you to believe that I could do that. And I remember they put an ad in the paper for this position, and I had just been hired 3 months earlier. And I went to the guy that was going to run that area, and I said, I want to do this. Who do I talk to? And he said, well, you got to talk to the vice president. And so I knocked on the vice president's door, who I knew,
Yeah.
but I knocked on the door and he said, come on in. And I said, that ad in the paper, I can't prove to you I can do that job, but I'm here to tell you I can do that job. And I'd love a crack at it. And they ended up, that was enough. I mean, they gave me the position, said, go for it. And I had the most powerful computer in the entire company at that point in time because you needed all that horsepower to run the mapping stuff.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of advice I'd give somebody. It's like, you've got to find those. I mean, that was a once in a lifetime kind of an opportunity that ended up leading to a long career in research and retail. And who would have known, right? I mean, it was, but so, I mean, it's really taking those risks and not being afraid to try something that you may or may not, really have the experience to do. But, but if you feel you can do it, give it a shot.
Man, that's good. And it's funny because I don't know, do you listen to many podcasts, I guess, or Joe Rogan?
A few, yeah.
Obviously, but have you heard a guy named Theo Vaughn?
Mm-mm.
He cracks me up. He's definitely got a very interesting character, we'll say. But half the stuff is just silliness and kind of funny, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just said that. But he actually said something really good, and I thought it was so good. I heard it yesterday, and he was talking about someone had asked him, "What would you tell yourself? If you could go back and tell yourself something at a younger age, what would you say?" And exactly to your point, his statement was, he goes, ask her out. And it's like, and she's like, oh, really? It's about a girl. And he goes, no, whether it's a girl, whether it's a job, whether it's a trip you want to take, whether it's an opportunity, whether it's a chance that you're taking on yourself, whatever it is, ask her out. He's like, it don't matter what that is. If it's a person, it's a thing, it's a place, take more risk on yourself and jump in, because you never know what's going to happen if you don't take the opportunity. You'll never know. And so I just thought that was really, honestly, surprisingly deep, actually. So, but it was just like, what would life look like if we all just walked into the office and said, "Hey, can I talk to you? I know I'm that guy." So
Right.
kudos, man. That's really awesome to hear that. I think especially in today's society, we think that everything has to look a certain way. It has to go through a certain channel online, or it needs to go through these certain levels, when in reality, it's still people to people, right? And so the opportunity to walk right in there, you knew him, you had a good rapport already, and you just said, "Hey, look," you went in humbly but confidently and just said, "Look, I'm that guy." And they took that chance on you, and now here you are, man. I mean, just imagine if you hadn't gone and done that, what life would have been differently, but you'd have still been successful. It would just been probably a different path.
Right. You just don't know. And the other piece I would say in terms of advice that I go along with that is learn, learn, learn. I mean, I'm like a lifelong learner. I can't help myself. I mean, I'm digging into everything from AI to VR to, you name it. I can't help myself.
Yeah.
And I think that curiosity, that willingness to just, if I don't know how to do something, I go figure it out. And that's another strong attribute for somebody starting out in their career, that curiosity, have that willingness to just go learn something new, go, watch a, podcast. I mean, listen to a podcast, watch a video on YouTube, go study up on stuff, because, that's the kind of thing where, I mean, a lot of my career has not been because of what I did in college. It's been because I've learned stuff, that allowed me to do it. And I think that's another thing that is definitely a good piece of advice for somebody starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of curious, what are you curious about right now? What's some stuff that's coming down the pipeline in retail, and specifically your area of expertise? But just in general in retail, what's something that really gets you excited right now?
Well, I'd say one thing is really the whole, I mean, the AI, generative AI is one thing that I'm like super interested in. I've been messing around with, AI stuff for the last couple of years, well before ChatGPT, and so on. But I think that we're just so early in this process. And I know there's kind of two schools of thought or two camps out there. One is, I wish it had never happened. And the other one is, I'm super excited. Right. So, I mean, people tend to have a very polar position on this, at least everybody I've talked to. Yeah. But, I have a good friend who's a marketing communications guy, and I worked with him at Nash Finch, and we had lunch, and he said, I've been looking at this, and he does graphic design work, and he's very successful in his own company. And he said, I could do one of two things. I could dig my head in the sand and just kind of ignore this for the next hope I get through the next 5 or 6 years till I retire. Or I can embrace it and try to really, utilize it in the work I do. And he said, I'm doing that. And he told me about a week or two after that he'd been picking up clients because they saw him posting generative AI photo work that he had done. And they were so impressed that he was doing that and he was ahead of the curve that they hired him. So, yeah. I mean, I really think that there's going to, whether it's automation, whether it's advertising, whether it's accounting, whether it's research tools, AI is going to play an increasing role as time goes on. We're not going backwards on this. And I tend to be pretty bullish on tech given my background. And I didn't mention this, but for about a year at Nash Finch, I also ran the corporate computer center. So that was my operational experience.
So what all did that entail?
Well, that was at the time, that was about a dozen computer operators, a couple of data entry clerks, the old mainframe that took up a room that was air conditioned, with the floor tiles and
floppies,
Oh yeah, I mean the big, UPS battery backups that were the size of a floor.
Yep.
And so it was quite a deal. But I kind of, as my boss at the time said, you did about 5 years worth of work in a year, because I redid everything and realigned the supply chain and all sorts of stuff. But it was interesting. But I'm pretty bullish on technology in general. Also, given my dad working for Control Data, I used every computer under the sun as they came out. Yeah. I had an Apple Lisa when I was a kid.
Nice.
So, I just see that there's more, there's so much more application than we're even thinking about today. And it's going to get so much better in terms of capability as time goes on. And I think the same thing about virtual reality. VR is not dead. It's not going away. We never really had a metaverse. And just because a company's named Meta doesn't mean that they're the metaverse.
Exactly. Well, so, and, speaking of, what did you think of the recent thing? We're talking about VR here. What did you think of Apple's recent release with their mixed reality headset? I mean, what do you see some good applications there?
It's interesting. I wish that somebody would make some kind of a combination that's a little more like Google Glass, but doesn't look so nerdy.
Yep.
That would allow you to do real heads up display kind of stuff as you're moving around. I mean, I didn't have it, but I had a friend who had Google Glass, and I mean, the battery life was horrid, but the thing had some real interesting capability. And I think Apple of all people, I'm a Mac guy. So, I mean, I like Apple stuff. Now, granted, the price tag for what you're going to be able to do with it, I'm not sure that we're there quite yet.
Yeah.
But I do think that a mixed reality headset like that, if it wasn't so cumbersome and clunky to wear and had longer battery life, would be is kind of the next iteration. I think AR is so much easier to sell and to start using than VR is, but it's not as immersive. And, I got an Oculus headset years ago, and I've been messing with that for years. And it's not really for productivity, but for connectivity with people. Like during COVID, I I played laser tag with my kids, in VR. I mean, it was like, because they live in other places. So it was, I think there's so much more application. And with retail, there's going to be a time and a place where that stuff's going to continue to evolve and be interesting. I mean, Second Life was Second Life. Now we're now we're into VR, but the stuff's going to keep evolving till it gets to a place where it's going to be much more mainstream and much more utilized in a broader way. But we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you bring that up because I'm definitely a sociable person, and so I jumped into, was it Rec Room, I think it was, the other day, and was playing around in there a little bit. And then there's a couple different other programs. We got my son the Oculus 2. Was it 2 Christmases ago or whatever? So whenever it was still pretty hot there and everything, and so we got that, and it was so funny because I usually don't enjoy kind of the social element of VR stuff, just meeting random people, because that's just weird for me. I'm sorry. Like I grew up in the whole realm of AIM chat, the AOL Instant Messenger
Oh
and
yeah.
everything else, and so you had enough. I kind of had enough of that in college, of like random people, bring, popping up on your screen. But it was so funny because, of course, of the two people that I met in the VR headset that day, was they were both dads playing on their kids their kids Oculus and wasting time. They said, "You know what? The kid's gone for the day. I'm gonna jump in and check this out." And so I think we were all skeet shooting at one point. So that was pretty fun. But no, it's really cool to see. I think the advancements that we've got, and knowing how fast it's going to compound too, because it feels like every advancement that we make, it's half life of everything else. It's incredible. So can't wait to see what AI does for us in the coming weeks and months and years.
Right. I mean, how long has ChatGPT been hot? A few months now. I mean, it's like, think about how far it's come in that short a period of time. And I was using AI writers a couple of years ago that were built on previous versions of that, and I thought that was cool. But here we are now, and what's the next one going to be?
Yeah.
But I'm not worried about it taking over the world and destroying us. I'm not buying that. So
Now that's I think that'll be a little while still, but I'm not too worried about it, because who knows? Whatever. By that point, hopefully, I'll be set up on a farm somewhere far, far from society. Uh, so I guess we'll kind of wrap up a little bit here. But if you had to, one thing I love asking, because obviously you've been in the field for a long time, you understand the industry, you've got a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. We've talked a little bit about, taking that chance on yourself and jumping in with that conversation. If you could go back in time, though, to when you were just getting going, is there one piece of advice that you would love to tell yourself? And it can be the same thing you've already talked about, or it can be something else. But what would you go back and tell yourself when you were just getting going here in retail and kind of your career path?
yeah, I mean, I think what I would have done differently is actually pre that a little bit. Because, I mean, when I was in high school, I mean, I didn't really know I mean, what am I going to do? Right. I mean, I didn't take advantage of a lot of like educational opportunities. I was a good student, but I didn't do all the, extra stuff. I started working, which was good experience. Like I talked about earlier, but I really didn't do the high school stuff. I mean, and I think that it might have been helpful to me to have a wider perspective going into college than I did.
Mm.
And so I might have done, student government, or I might have done other things that I didn't try, because I didn't really have that. I was probably more risk adverse when I was in high school than I was once I got to college and into my career. I was probably more cautious, and I think I would have been less cautious and done more earlier to try to broaden myself than I did. I think that's what I would probably do differently.
Okay. All right. No, I think that's really good, because, especially as we're kind of heading into this era right now where, I feel like traditional college has kind of taken some hits lately, and so people are looking at it differently, going, do I do this? Do I do a trade school? Do I not even go and just jump right into work? Man, I think that's some really good advice to kind of lead people along their own path of figuring out who they are and maybe what they want to do in life. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, when I got to college, that's kind of when I mean, I hit my stride in terms of figuring out, okay, what do I want to do? I'd been exposed to the research stuff by then. And I worked at AT&T while I was in college. So I got a little bit of a big corporate experience, as at that time they were, just out of divestiture. And so it was, that's where I really hit my stride. But earlier than that, I didn't really, it wasn't as important to me. But like, once I got to college and started taking some of the courses and understanding, for me, that was the right thing. Now, it's not for everybody. Some people are much more well suited to go to trade school or do something else. And we should encourage that, because there's lots of good green jobs. There's lots of good. I work with a nonprofit called RetailWire that has some outstanding training for youth in the green sector, who otherwise might not, who might not find a good career path otherwise. So, there's lots of good opportunities out there. Find what's right for you,
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, if anyone wants to follow up with you a little bit more and kind of learn more about who you are and what you're up to, where would the best place for that be? Would that be LinkedIn for you, or is there a different website or anything that we should go to, or what's the best way?
Yeah, best way, reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's great. And the feedback group, it's feedbackgroup.com is our website. You can reach out there as well and learn more about the kind of things we do. But yeah, absolutely. I'd welcome invite anybody to reach out to me that wants to connect.
Awesome. Well, I will make sure and put those both in the show notes here. So that way I'll put a link directly to your LinkedIn on there, and then I'll put the feedback group website as well. So, but do Brian a favor though, if you do end up jumping in and wanting to connect with him on LinkedIn, because there's a lot of spammers out there right now, and especially, everybody thinks that they can give me, 47 new leads a day, and, increase my revenues 10x in the next month. If you do reach out to Brian on LinkedIn, throw a little note in there. You know how to ask you if you want to send a note with it. Just say, hey, heard you on the RetailWire podcast. Loved what you had to say. Would love to connect. That way he knows where you're coming from, that you're a real human being, and that you actually did listen to him. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. What do you think, Brian? You good? Anything else that we need to throw in?
No, it was great. I appreciate the conversation, and thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much again for being here with us, and look forward to having you involved in more conversations here on RetailWire. And of course, if you're listening to this right now, and or if you're watching us on YouTube and you have not hit subscribe yet, be sure and do that, because we would love to have you following us to make sure you don't miss any additional episodes that we have. We got some really great guests coming up. We got some more, just some fun content. I'm not even going to get into it right now, but you're not going to want to miss it. That's for sure. We're on all your major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. So if you want to see what either of the Brians here look like, then go over to YouTube. You'll find us there. Look up RetailWire, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the RetailWire podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting platform and leave us a comment for a chance to hear it read on the next show. See you next time here on the RetailWire podcast.